Tiger King. Amazing show. Probably wouldn't put it in my top 10 for things to have on the background when you're trying to be close and intimate with somebody.
We're back with Dating Diaries, Quarantine Confessions. I'm Andrea Gunning.
And I'm Ben Fetterman.
Netflix and chill. More like Quarantine and Tiger King, am I right?
Of course our boy Reno is hooking up to Tiger King. Cannot wait to hear his story.
We heard from Reno in our debut episode. He recently had hip surgery, but he hadn't given up on meeting girls in quarantine. To refresh your memory, here was one way he thought he could still meet women.
Luckily, I've got an ace up my sleeve. I have a little French bulldog puppy. And so I'm like, I could really use some help walking him. So we could go walk outside and you could walk him and, I could crutch around and have a great time that way. And we're in the open air. So there still is some window, I would say, to be able to go on dates.
We checked back in with Reno a few weeks after our first chat. He met a new girl on Tinder. They made plans for sushi at his place. It was a good date.
She ended up staying the night, and for me, it was really interesting to balance her, my hip, and then my little Frenchie Napoleon, trying to share the bed with everybody, but luckily we were able to get through it and made it work.
Was there ever a doubt?
And then I'm like, let's watch something. I keep hearing about the show Tiger King. So we're kind of cuddling and making out, and, just kind of the moment. I'm like, this is really nice. And it was just really funny because all of a sudden I heard Carol say something like, "Hey there, all you cool cats and kittens." And we would just start dying no matter what or where we were at the moment. Just completely lost it laughing. Probably wouldn't put it in my top 10 for things to have on the background when you're trying to be close and intimate with somebody.
What, Tiger King isn't the soundtrack for lovemaking?
She ended up actually coming over a second time, and it was just as fun as the first. But then soon after that, my roommate's girlfriend had a fever, and she ended up leaving the house. But we were kind of cautious and saying, oh man, what if potentially she had it? So we were actually going to hang out again. But she said, maybe it's just better off we don't hang out. And as much as it sucked, I would have loved to have seen her again. I completely agree.
Even though they ultimately made the responsible choice, Reno has a message for people who disapprove of his initial decisions.
For all the people that are trying to go full Judge Judy on me, there's plenty of times I'm sure people have had sex without condoms and chance stuff. And honestly, in the moment, kind of said, screw it. But now after the scare with my roommate's girlfriend and all that, we decided not to hang out.
Reno self-quarantined for 2 weeks. No dates, no cute French bulldog 3 in a bed. He didn't take any chances.
My roommate's girlfriend actually ended up testing positive for it. So it was a little bit scary to think if I've had any symptoms. Luckily, I've been completely fine there, and so has my roommate.
Corona is starting to hit close to home for Reno. Reno gets a lot of flack, but this girl is a willing participant. She made the choice to go back to his apartment. So it's not just Reno. He's not making this decision in a vacuum, and women are taking these risks too.
100%.
I respect the fact that the news came down about COVID-19, that they were potentially exposed, and they made the responsible decision to self-quarantine and separate.
I've been very fortunate not to have that experience, and so I don't know what it feels like, but I can only feel scared for him and for everyone around him.
It's really scary. We all need to be responsible for being safe and taking this situation seriously. There's people outside of the two of them, and you have to protect that. I think if everyone took a hard look at some of their behaviors in this quarantine, I know a lot of people are bargaining. It's what can I get away with to make my life a little bit easier? I think Reno is onto something about judgment and shame. There's hypocritical behavior happening outside of dating. The other day, I needed to get out of the house and went for a walk on my high school campus. It's a Catholic school. It's a huge campus. It was basically empty. And this nun came out of nowhere and went out of her way to get within 6 feet of me just to yell at me because I was on, quote, private property. I mean, I guess we all need to get our rocks off somehow in these trying times, but sister breached 6 feet. Leave some room for the Holy Ghost, sister. Meredith is 25 and works in the financial field. She has a roommate, and that's a good thing. She's observing the stay-at-home order seriously. She's not risking it. She has her reasons, but she's still on the dating apps.
Within a 5-minute conversation, I had one guy asking me for my email so we could Zoom. I was like, I've talked to you for 5 minutes. So they're definitely quicker to ask for a phone number, social media, Snapchat, and all of that. And then there were a few that kind of ignored the whole fact that we're supposed to be quarantined and asked if I wanted to meet up somewhere, which I thought was funny because I then asked, okay, so we do meet up and do something. Where do you want to go? Everything is shut down. So then they'll mention, oh, well, we can sit on the couch and sit 6 feet away. I'm like, I can't take any of you seriously.
Meredith knows her boundaries, but it also begs the question some guys have asked her. Why are you on the dating apps if you don't want to meet up?
Honestly, it is very entertaining. I mean, there's not much to do in this apartment. You can only watch so many TV shows on Hulu and Netflix. So I'm still on them to see if maybe, depending when all of this is over, if there is anyone I find interesting enough to then make plans to meet up when we're allowed back out.
When we're allowed back out. She's holding off, and it's because Meredith is getting firsthand information about the coronavirus.
The majority of my family works in healthcare, so I have beat into my head that quarantine, like pandemic, you have to take it seriously. So I'm taking it very seriously and I'm trying to limit contact. It is tough because I feel like every conversation that I'm having with people is about the quarantine. And it's like, oh yeah, this sucks. And it's like, yeah, I know it sucks. Can we talk about something else that, isn't this? But I mean, it is kind of tough because I feel like an easy conversation starter would be like, oh, like, what did you do this week? What are you doing this weekend? And then kind of evolve from that. But now it's, oh, I laid in bed all day and didn't do anything.
She's got a point. It's not riveting conversation, so she's trying to make the best of it. Meredith also has some advice for people climbing the walls in quarantine.
Take a deep breath. We'll be free again soon, but don't let it make you go crazy and do something stupid. Oh my gosh, you're not the only ones in a quarantine. Like, I don't want to give you my Zoom or email within 5 minutes of talking to you, and I don't want to sit on your couch 6 feet away from you. Stop asking. Just think before you type.
Meredith is very clear about what she wants to get out of dating apps. And I'm impressed that she knows who she is and what she finds acceptable. I think before you type is true.
It's been drilled down that social distancing is how we're going to get through this. I'm not trying to call my wife out, but her parents wanted us to come over for dinner, and my wife really wanted that. She wanted to spend time with family. They should be in our quarantine bubble. And there was tension around that. We had very different feelings on it and had to really talk that out. If you're single and you're meeting people for the first time, it takes a lot of strength to put those boundaries up and push away possible connection, potentially isolating yourself further.
The only thing I'll say, and that it's really up for Meredith to figure out, is that there are a ton of people who, before all this happened, were on dating apps and really reserved conversation until the first date. I think what Meredith is doing is commendable, but I also want her to be open to the fact that some people just don't know what they're doing and are used to the old way of communicating on the dating apps right now. Alternatively, I'm sure there are plenty of guys that are just be like, hey, can I sit within 6 feet? Because they're basically just eager to hump her leg. I mean, that's how it comes off.
I hope she meets her guy that says, hey, just flat out, I want to keep this to the chat. I do not want to meet in person right now. That would be great.
But guys, the 6 feet apart on the couch is just not working. Like, for the majority of us, it's not working. But Meredith, let's not write everybody off so quickly. Lobster is 33. He works in education and has a roommate. Lobster is no stranger to the dating apps, but doesn't take it too seriously. So, of course, our first question was, what's up with the nickname?
I always preface that story by saying, guys, it's not a great story because they think that I once fought somebody at a seafood restaurant and stabbed them with lobster claws. One of my best friends, he was transferred from a school in Portugal, and he could not say my last name correctly. So what came out of his mouth was lobster instead of my last name. And unfortunately, that name has stuck ever since. And it's going on about 27 years now. I've been on every dating site known to man. So this is my first blind date I tried out, and it wasn't all bad.
Not a ringing endorsement, but okay.
We felt it was safe to meet for the first time and to continue meeting after that. I was like, hey, I make a mean chicken parmesan if you want to come by and give it a try. 2 hours later, she was over at my house. We were drinking wine, eating chicken parmesan. It was pretty good, I'm not going to lie. We went from my dining room table to my couch to watch a movie, and we got all cuddly up on the first date. Like, we just skipped 30 steps. Whether we wanted to or not, we just ate 2 huge things of chicken parmesan. What else are you going to do? It literally felt like she was my wife of 10 years. It was very odd. It was just a situation of she knew she was in a safe place.
They started seeing each other every few days. It was nice. More than a hookup, less than a girlfriend. But it was a little complicated. This new lady was a single mom of a very young child, and also a widow, a very young widow.
And we both just got extremely busy.
They had an understanding. They talked through the expectations early on.
She was really stuck at home with no babysitter, no daycare, no nothing. That's when you could say like shit got real, and we kind of just faded away.
Okay, it faded away. But this was also a mature adult woman with a past. Was it too much?
Like, I can barely walk and chew gum at the same time, let alone deal with that and a myriad of other problems. We dated for a month, but I haven't talked to her recently. I'm sure if I did, we could do something again.
They had a thing, a fling, and then resumed their lives.
Like, not even ghosted, nobody was mad at each other. She's got a very important job. Like, my job comes first, too. If she didn't hear from me in a week, she wouldn't be worried or upset because this is a situation that no one alive has lived in or experienced. Explain your life, because you don't want people to feel some kind of way because they're not answering your phone calls or text messages, but realistically, they're probably working or dealing with a child or doing something they have to do.
Sage advice from a dude named Lobster. Here's a situation where quarantine is placing constraints on this relationship. She can't get childcare. She can't come over. He's not going to go over there and meet the kid because they're just not there in that stage of their relationship. So it's kind of done.
I think what's great about this story coming off of last week is at least there wasn't any ghosting in this. At least this was a mature uncoupling. 2 people really recognizing each other's situations and saying, hey, this was what it was in a moment in time. I love that. Maybe this just wasn't meant to be anything more than a COVID-19 romance.
I appreciate the maturity on both individuals' parts. Now, I gotta say, we're seeing a trend emerging here. And as the weeks go on, when it comes to romance, love is either igniting or flaming out in a flash. And in this case, things heated up quickly and just kind of burnt out. This COVID-19 quarantine is an accelerant, no question.
Maybe they'll connect when life returns to some kind of normalcy because they will have space to let those other parts of their lives in.
Teresa's 30 years old. She recently ended a 3-year relationship. She was getting back out there. Dating apps were a new experience for her.
I live alone. My ex moved out in January. It was my first time ever living alone. I was afraid I wasn't going to like it. I ended up loving it, having my own space, but I definitely jumped into dating very quickly, and I was excited to use the apps. It was a blast.
It was a blast until she couldn't see people anymore. Until quarantine happened. Teresa is an essential worker. She's helping people. It's exhausting, emotionally taxing.
If I was living alone during this, going to work and then coming home and sitting in my house by myself, it would have been really isolating. 2 days into the stay-at-home order, I was sitting on the subway and I was swiping on Hinge, and I saw someone's profile that said our first date would be on public transportation.
That could be intriguing or scary, but in this case, it was perfect.
And I just messaged him, and he messaged me back immediately and said, "Do you want to meet me on the subway after work?" And that's what I did.
Well, there aren't a lot of options right now, but the subways are running.
Beforehand, I had picked up snacks. For our first date, I picked up 3 different kinds of Cheetos, and I picked up scratch-off lottery tickets. And he said he walked up and saw me leaning against one of the subway beams doing a scratch-off, and he almost turned the hell around. He was like, "This person's insane."
3 different kinds of Cheetos? Is she kidding? I would date her.
We rode the subway for an hour, and it was raining outside, and we walked through the city for like 4 hours by ourselves because everyone was staying home. It was so romantic. So he walked me home, and in the morning, we started texting. So I invited him over to my house, and he had breakfast here before he went to work. And he came over after work, still hadn't kissed. This is now our 3rd date in 20 hours or something like that. I was like, oh my God, I want to spend the rest of my life with this stranger.
But there was something Teresa had to tell him that could prevent a 4th date. She volunteered for an assignment that put her in direct contact with COVID-19 patients. She'd have all the proper protective gear, but she knew she was still at risk. So she laid it all out there.
I told him, I'm still an essential worker. I could get sick. I really don't want you to get sick. I'm okay with us separating and then meeting back up after this. Like, I'm not seeing any of my friends or family. So I'll go about this however you feel comfortable. And if you want to see me, we have to be really careful about this.
This is love in a pandemic. There might be magic within reach, but you have to do a calculation. Teresa gave him the choice.
He said, give me 3 weeks dating me exclusively and we'll see where it goes. So I was like, all right, 3 weeks, 21 days. Now we're at 31 days and he has not gone home since. I feel like we're falling in love and it just feels like the stars aligned. And I texted the 4 other people I was loosely seeing and was like, hey, I met someone. If you hear from me in 21 days, it means it didn't work out. If you don't hear from me in 21 days, it means we fell in love. And I wish you the best. I think this is one of the happiest times in my life.
Teresa had one question for me and Ben.
Do you guys want to come to the wedding? You really can.
Ben, this is the sweetest story I have ever heard. This is so friggin' adorable. My hopeless romantic heart is beating out of its chest.
This is love in Corona. This seems like it's out of a movie, a fairy tale, an odd fairy tale, meeting in a subway, but there's something sweet and hopelessly romantic about the 2 of them. It's beautiful.
I mean, it's such a great example of dating apps just working. And now look at them. I hope it keeps going.
Yeah, I'm just impressed that this guy made a commitment and said, I want to be here with you during this. And if you'll take me, I'll move in. And she said, okay, I'll give it 21 days. And if we're still together in 21 days, then maybe this is real. It's been over a month.
I need to get myself a friggin' Metro card.
Dre, we're 3 episodes into our podcast and you haven't even let the audience in on your love life at all. What's going on with you?
Ugh, shucks, we're out of time, so I don't think we're going to be able to get into that. But next week, I think I'll be ready to dig into how dating in quarantine has been going for me. Hearing from everyone has really inspired me to share what I've been dealing with.
Well, Dre, I can't wait. We'll see you guys next week.
If you're crushing on this podcast, let us know. Rate and review it. Share it with your friends. We're on Instagram and Twitter at Dating Diaries QC.
And we want to hear from you. Tell us your quarantine stories by emailing us at datingdiariespod@gmail.com.
On the next episode of Dating Diaries Quarantine Confessions.
The funny thing is a lot of my friends who are in relationships keep calling me, doing the like, are you okay? It must be so hard being alone. I think they're just calling so eventually they can just finish the conversation with bitching about their spouse.
I'm Andrea Gunning, and stay safe out there, guys. This podcast is hosted and produced by me, Andrea Gunning. Executive produced by Nancy Glass, Ben Fetterman, and Carrie Hartman. Produced by Julie Clark and Rocky Alt. Edited by Matt Delvecchio with assistance from Dean Welsh and Kelly Wardhand. Thanks to production coordinators Megan Paisley and Brianna Faris. The show was mixed by Dave Zaya. Special thanks to Mybe Music.